So, what was it about your background, your experience that led you to this point where you became passionate about community activism, social activism, justice, social justice? What was it? What happened? What was it?
Yeah, I say it's in my DNA.
Okay.
My grandfather, the late Honorable Reverend Willie Anderson Sr., he led the NAACP in South Georgia during in the '60s, and so he was responsible, along with others, but mainly him, for desegregating the largest military base in Georgia. And making sure Black folks had jobs and work to go to, and he did it all the way till he was elected, county supervisor of the largest city down in South Georgia near Savannah. And so, growing up with that in my DNA and watching my father growing up as a child in Atlanta, we were always feeding homeless folks. We were always going to hear and knowing what's going on in the nation. And my father encouraged us, my mother as well, encouraged us to read and understand what's going on, and to never see yourself as less than.
Mm.
Being Black in the South, as being Black anywhere in America, I got followed around stores, got pulled over by police, and I always asked the question, why is it this way? And my father would always say that racism is a sickness of sin,
Mm.
and we don't hate them, we hate the sin that they perpetuate, and that it's our job to be the light and to move people forward. And my grandfather would always say, when you walk into a room, no matter who's in the room, you speak the truth. You stay solid, you have integrity, and you stand up for your people. And if you leave with a few scratches, that's okay. Just leave them in a few scratches as well. I know that God is
Ah.
with you. And so that is what really instilled that into me. And then at Morehouse, um, really, I was a chapel assistant and political science major as well. And so sitting with legends, sitting with legends in that chapel, I'm reminded even now that C.T. Vivian would come and talk to us, that John Lewis would come and talk to us, that Christine King Ferris would come and speak and sit with us, that preachers from across the country would come and really sit and shape us. And you would know that you are on hollow ground, that Howard Thurman, that Martin Luther King, that W.E.B. Du Bois, that Nabrit, with all, Benjamin Mays, were all living and walking with you in
Hmm.
this journey. And it was your responsibility to continue that charge in this marathon.
Truly, truly hallowed grounds, right? Powerful, powerful. So it's in your DNA. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. I think you may have mentioned to me about your grandfather. It seems I vaguely remember that, but that's nice to know that and get caught up on that. So tell us, if you would, a little bit about Black Lives Matter. I'm not sure all of our listeners will and viewers will know about what Lives Matter is in terms of the organization. So what is it? And who are they? What does it stand for?
Black Lives Matter stands for the liberation and continuation of freedom for our people. Um, Most of you know that in 2012, when Trayvon Martin was killed in his neighborhood for getting a bag of Skittles and an Arizona iced tea. Um, there was Patrice Cullors and Opal and others uh, had started just a hashtag that said Black Lives Matter, right? Just Black Lives Matter. In Los Angeles, Patrice and Dr. Melina Abdullah and others got together. The story goes, and they met all through the night and figuring out what can we do to really uplift and fight for our people and the families who have lost loved ones at the hands of the police. And so, Black Lives Matter is a freedom struggle. There are chapters all across the nation. Um, the larger group that you may have heard of is called the Movement for Black Lives. The Movement for Black Lives is made up of over 100 different type of movements. So that includes, um, you know, Live Free, which is a part of PICO, which includes Tamika Mallory's Until Freedom, which includes so many Pan-African expressions of freedom across the nation, got together under the Movement for Black Lives, and Black Lives Matters is a part of the Movement for Black Lives, and has a platform which they're putting forward that really says until Black people are free, none of us can truly be free. That, as Dr. King had said, that we are caught up in inescapable web mutuality, and Black Lives Matter puts a exclamation point on that. It says, until Black people get free, until we realize that, until the nation repents from its original sins of slavery, of racism, of the genocide of the native folks of this land, that we really can't be free. And so we're continuing in this struggle.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. So, what would you say? What do you say? Things kind of shifted, I would say. So it's interesting how a few years back, often people didn't take Black Lives Matter seriously. We know that even as late as 3-4 years ago, that they were working hard and legislation was being changed in 30 of 50 states, and they were doing real work in between the protests. Absolutely. Policy change was happening, so we saw that. But still, they were kind of a pariah in the political context, in society at large, particularly outside of the Black community. Colin Kaepernick wasn't respected in the same way. What he was doing wasn't understood. But now, on the heels of the more recent murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and was the gentleman, was Brooks in Atlanta?
Rayshard Brooks.
Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta. So now it seems as though there has been this embrace, this understanding that, okay, I guess they were making sense. So what do you make of that, and why the shift? What happened with us nationally and globally so that now it made sense?
I think that Black Lives Matter has been working for years, 7 years, to really push this narrative forward, to really put Black people at the center, put us on the agenda of so many politicians across the country and the world. It's an international movement. I think what happened, what we saw is that when George Floyd was executed and lynched in the streets for all of us to see, I think in the middle of a global pandemic where so many wounds around the segregation in two Americas was exposed, right? I think the context can't be lost that George Floyd is killed when we see the numbers of Black people dying disproportionately to our other people in this country because we have disinvested healthcare from the Black community, right? I live in Los Angeles, South Los Angeles, and the only real hospital, major hospital, is MLK Hospital, right? There's one, right? There's little medical centers across, but there's only one major hospital for over 2 million people, right? And so we saw that across the country, in Cancer Alley down in Louisiana. We saw it in Philadelphia. We saw it back in Atlanta. And these Black centers, we saw Black people dying disproportionately. We also saw the disinvestment of economic investment because we saw PPP come out and Black businesses not get the money, right? But yet, we saw people like, Ruth's Chris, which is a, upscale steak joint, get the money, right? And we saw
Los Angeles Lakers
got money, right? We saw all of the disinvestment, and it was clear what Black people have always known, that there has been a strategic disinvestment in Black community. that we have a sometimes mistaken movement for progress, right? And so we were sitting there watching it, and then we saw Chauvin's neck, I mean, knee on
Hmm.
George Floyd's neck. And what we saw, and what I saw, was what a slave catcher looks like, catching a slave and telling them I'm putting you back in your place, right? And so we've known and we've heard stories. If you black and we've coming from the South, there's always stories about not calling the police because of what the police did, because the police were the ones who enforced Jim Crow. The police were the ones who enforced black clothes. The police were the ones who enforced the crackdown of the war on drugs, which really was a riddling and locking up of black folks in America, right? Instead of giving us health centers and mental health centers and trauma centers and social workers, we saw that the social workers and the big mama down the street were no longer the places where people got wisdom and knowledge, but the police became the go-to for everything, right? George Foreman has in his book, Locking Up Our Own, that sometimes we gave the police the role that so many other people had in our community, right? And so we saw that, and then when George Floyd is killed, it's just insult to injury. It literally just said your life does not matter, and we can have you in the street like we had Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Keisha Michael and Grishario Mack and so many others, and the list is so long that your life didn't matter. And I think because everyone was at home, it pricked the conscience of the nation to say that if we don't stand up now, then America, which is already on life support, will completely die. If we don't stand up now, if we don't try to breathe new life to democracy, if we don't recognize what is right here in front of us, right? We didn't take the streets like this for Ahmaud Arbery, which we must repent for, right? Because Ahmaud Arbery was just running in his neighborhood, and he was literally hunted and killed, right? And we said, enough is enough. Breonna Taylor was sleeping in her bed when she was shot 8 times, right? Like, Tatiana Jefferson was playing games with her child when they are killed, right? Like, we know the reality of living black in America. And when we saw George Floyd get killed, we said enough is enough. We can't sit silent anymore. And I think because the black freedom struggle was already happening, has already been happening, and Black Lives Matter has been highlighting it, and Black Lives Matter has become mainstream. I think that's something else that you see all these businesses now putting up Black Lives Matter. And my question is always, are you investing in Black Lives or just saying it, giving the lip service, right? And so, but, we seen it come mainstream, so it became okay for folks to really go out into the streets. And I have to tell you, Dr. Thomas, that these crowds are some of the largest crowds we've seen in history. I was talking to one of my mentors, Reverend James Lawson, this week. We've talked a couple of times this week, and he said this is larger than the freedom movement of the 60s. Right. He says this is the largest movement he thinks this country has ever seen in its entire history.
That's right. There's actually an article that says as much. I can't remember where I saw it. I've got it somewhere, but I read an article that said that the Black Lives Matter movement is the largest movement in the history of this country. So that is powerful. And you mentioned the word mainstreaming. So really that is what has happened. It has become mainstreamed. And I was watching NBA on Wednesday and watched a little bit yesterday. They're back at it again. I think 8 games before the final start. And on the court, not in the center, but right on the side of the court, very large, says Black Lives Matter. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
So that is mainstream, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always careful not to get so excited about that, because that's a can of paint. You know what I mean? That's a can of paint. And the real question is, can I own the corporation that is making the paint? Can I sit on the board of the corporation that is distributing the paint, right? And can I live in the community with the person who is on the board or the owner of the paint corporation? So the real work still has yet to be done. And I think you said a powerful thing when you said we can't confuse movement with progress. That's powerful. That's profound. And I'm sure you all say that often in your in the civil rights and social justice communities, but it certainly bears re-mentioning. So what do you say then? What do you say to people who say all lives matter or blue lives matter? What do you say to them?
I would say that that statement on its face is a misunderstanding of the context in which we live in, and that it is in many ways code switching, and in my opinion, it's a little bit of race baiting. Because when you say all lives matter or blue lives matter, you are trying to erase the fact that there is an initial sin, a starting point in which we are coming from. Black Lives Matter means that all lives matter, because Black Lives Matter says that your life won't matter truly until all of us can breathe. And so we have to go to who has been the most oppressed in this nation, right? And I think you have to have a context of history to understand that it was Black folks who were stolen and some sold from Africa to this nation in 1619. It was Black folks who laid the framework, and it is because of Black folks that we even use terms like African American or Asian American. The hyphen meant something because 3/5 of a person meant something, right? So you have to understand that at the genesis of this nation, it was Black folks, which everything else was defined against, right? To build this country. And so if we are going to right the original wrongs and the original sin, when we say Black Lives Matter, you need to know you're included. Because all the time in this nation, majority of the freedoms we have seen in this nation have come at the extent of Black freedom fighters or a Black death. If we look at it, if we're really truthful about it in the moment, right? That even when we look at the labor movement, it was pool porters. It was Philip, Philip Randolph and others who gave their blood, sweat, and tears so that we could have a larger labor movement, right? If you look at the women who were fighting, it was people like Harriet Tubman and Ida B. Wells who gave their blood, sweat, and tears, and everyone else got progress. It was Dr. King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and others in the 60s and 40s, and Adam Clayton Powell, who gave their blood, sweat, and tears. And then we get affirmative action, then we get housing codes and all of and we get a new immigration law, which allows so many people to come to America in the 60s. It's at the cost of Black life. And yet Black life has always been told, wait. All right, we gave you a little bit, now wait, and everyone else is doing well. And so when we say Black Lives Matter, we're saying that is the crucial question. It is a statement of affirmation. It is a to use theological language, it is a teleological, eschatological reality that we are calling forth, that Black lives must matter. We always know we have value and worth, but until the rest of the nation treats us as such, then we really can't be one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Excellent. Outstanding. Thank you so much for that historical context in your answer to that question about all lives and blue lives.